listening.
Thank you very much, guys. Okay, let's start off with a quick question. Boxing Day 2008, 26th December, what were you doing? Anyone remember remotely? No?
Eating turkey sandwiches.
Eating turkey sandwiches, yeah, having a hangover maybe. I was vomiting, okay? I was hugging my parents' bathroom toilet. I wasn't able to get back to my bedroom at this stage, and it's not because of too much booze. Okay, I've been unwell for 48 hours at this stage. My parents had got up, they'd gone out to my granddad's for Boxing Day lunch, family tradition, and they got back and they found me vomiting in the toilet, floods of tears. I look at my parents and go, I'm dying, help me. And they went, whatever, you got the flu, suck it up, get back to bed. After about an hour, convinced them to ring NHS Direct. NHS Direct, brilliantly helpful. They said, there's an emergency doctor's down the road, take him there. So we drove 45 minutes down the road, stopped 3 times so I could vomit out the car. They got me there, went into the emergency doctors to check me over and went, think it's food poisoning, you're going to be okay. What we're going to do is we're going to give you an injection to stop you vomiting, and then just go home, sleep it off. So they gave me this injection to stop me vomiting, in which case I projectile vomited down the side of the room I was in, blacked out on the floor. They picked me up, they put me on the bed, you know, they rubbed my hand and kind of gave me a slap till I woke up and sent me home. I went home, went back to bed, slept a little bit more, vomited a little bit more, this injection hadn't worked, woke up the next day and went, something's not right. This is not food poisoning. I am dying here. To which my mum goes, okay, we'll ring NHS Direct again. So we rang NHS Direct again and they went, okay, maybe it's something a little more. Take him to A&E if he's being that much of a baby about it. So they took me to A&E. I got a couple of paracetamols to try and bring my temperature down, and I fell asleep in the waiting room until I got called into the assessment room. So they call me in, I get up, I walk in, and the doctor looks at me and goes, let's get you a bed. So they took me into A&E, put me on a bed. I suddenly had numerous nurses around me putting IVs into my arm because of severe dehydration and taking vials of blood out my other arm. Whilst this was going on, unknown to me, a doctor had taken my parents aside and went, prepare for the worst, your son might die. Okay? The rest of the next couple of hours is a bit of a blur. Don't really know what happened. I woke up about 24 hours later though, on intensive care. I was right by a nurse's station and they were treating me pretty severely. I spent 3 days in that hospital before they went, we don't know what to do with him. He's too severe for our small local hospital. We need to transfer him up to somewhere else. So I got transferred up to King's College Hospital in London. For those of you who don't know, this is one of the biggest hospitals in Europe. Okay, very, very specialist in liver. What they knew at this stage is my liver wasn't working. They didn't know why though. I would spend the next 4 weeks on intensive care on the same ward as George Best. And during this time, I would have a cocktail of 13 different drugs given to me. I would have numerous surgery. I'd have 6 bags of blood given to me because my blood wasn't coagulating, so I was bleeding out a lot. Okay? I'd also have bone marrow taken. So, when they take bone marrow, they knock you out. Being so very ill, they couldn't put me under. So I had it with a local anaesthetic, which is pointless. So I'm laying on my side on the bed. I got 2 male nurses holding me down while someone drills into my lower back. Story has it that you could hear my screams down the ward. I then had surgery on my groin. They had to take out lymph nodes, which once again they couldn't knock me out for. So the doctor had a very, very technical way of doing this. He gives me a local anaesthetic, which numbs the top kind of 1/4 centimetre, cuts me until I scream, then give me another one. And this went on until he reached the 1.5 inch depth needed to take the lymph nodes. And there was this little Chinese lady that I will never, ever forget, because her sole job was to hold my hand and wipe away my tears. That was her job. And I absolutely loved her for it. So over the course of these 4 weeks, they were treating me for various things. I was getting cut, I've got scars all over me where they took skin grafts and all sorts. And one day I was laying in my bed and doctors came in to check me. And they left. And they were outside my room and I heard one say to the other, "I've no idea what to do now." And that night, I lay in my bed and I make my peace. I know that my time is pretty much up at this stage. And I fall asleep. At roughly 4 a.m, I wake up and I see my grandmother sat at the end of my bed. Now, we'd buried my grandmother 6 weeks before. Okay, if you ask my mum, she was an angel. If you ask my dad, I was high as a kite on the drugs they were giving me. I honestly don't know. But what I do know is the next day when I woke up, my stats had improved. Within 3 days, I was off intensive care. Within a week, I was going home. Couldn't tell you what happened. They eventually diagnosed me with secondary HLH, Epstein-Barr virus, major liver failure, and hepatitis. Any one of those 4 can kill you. At my worst, I had an 8% chance of survival. And on the 6 weeks later, this is what I looked like when I got discharged. I'd lost just over 1/3 of my weight. I'd lost just over 1/3 of my weight. And I came out of hospital a new man. We've heard that a lot today, about how these things can turn you around. But I came out a new man. I wanted to do good with the world. And more importantly to me, I wanted to raise money for the hospitals that treated me. But I was in no fit state to do this. So my mum and my aunt, they went and ran a 10K for me. They raised £800, so proud. My mum was 54 at the time. She'd never run a day in her life. And my aunt just struggled horrifically the whole way around. They raised £800. I'd been told I'd be lethargic for 18 months and not be able to do anything sport related. Within 6 months, I'd run my first 10K. Within 10 months, I'd run my first adventure race. And within a year, I'd run my first sub 4-hour marathon. And I was given a really good 2-finger salute to the illnesses that I had. So I sat there early January the next year and I went, right, I'm back. I need to raise some money for the hospitals that treated me. And so with my mum and my dad, we discussed ideas, various ideas, and I did some research into it. And I came across a guy called David Goggins. He was an ex-Navy SEAL. He went out to Afghanistan and he lost a lot of his troops out there. When he came back, he wanted to raise money for the Wounded Warrior Foundation, which is very similar to our guys. Help for Heroes, thank you. So he started doing some research and he came up with the slogan of, I could do a bake sale, but no one gives a shit. Simply, let's do one step above and beyond what everyone else did. So I've actually got that motto now on my bedroom wall. It's what I see every morning when I get up. So I started looking, doing some research, and we came up with the idea. I was going to run 100 miles. I was going to run a mile on the hour, every hour, for 100 hours, followed by a 10K. This was all going to be done on a half-mile loop. It's great for character building. So we did all the research, and I stood there on my start line, ready to go. I had a few other people with me, and I started my first big fundraiser. And we completed it. It was just over 4 days of running non-stop. With that one event, we were able to help buy a chemotherapy unit for one of the hospitals and redo the pediatrics ward. And I went, this is it. This is what I'm going to be doing now. This is my focus. This is why I'm here. So every year since then, I've done some sort of really big fundraiser based on that. And we always have the same motto. If I can come up to anyone and go, do you think this is achievable? And they go, yeah, I think you could do that. Scrap that idea, let's go and find a new one. And that has been our philosophy. The next year, I was reading Randolph Fine's autobiography, and I came up about the 7 marathons he did. And I went, that's my next one. So on 6 weeks of training, I trained to run 7 marathons in 7 cities in 7 days. Okay, we started in Bristol, I went to Birmingham, then went to Inverness, Edinburgh, Manchester, London, and Portsmouth. So we went all around the country in very much the wrong way. My third to last was Manchester. Okay, this is in the week leading up to Christmas. My third to last was Manchester. And whilst we were there, it went really cold. It was -2 when we started. The sleet came in, the snow came in, and by mile 16, I was really wet through. Okay, I was freezing cold. So I stopped, my support crew who were on bike with me, we stopped, we had a cup of tea, I had a meatball sub that will stay with me for a long, long time, and I went to change into my dry kit that we carried. However, at some point we'd ripped the dry bag that all my dry kit was in, so all my dry kit was soaking wet. So it was something out of a film. We're there in the toilets, we've got the heater going, and I'm trying to dry myself underneath. And eventually we couldn't get it dry anymore. We put the kit on and we carried on. We were able to go for roughly another 7 miles before I started to shake so much and slur my words, which anyone who's done anything knows this is the first signs of hypothermia. At that point, we called the event. We said, that's enough, not going to do it, health and safety needs to take over. Jumped on in a taxi, took me back to the hotel, got in a shower, warmed myself up, had a cup of tea, and then I rang my sponsor. This is the first event I've done with a big sponsor, and I said, I'm really, really sorry, I failed you. And they went, don't be stupid. You've gone a lot further than anyone else could have. You're doing a fantastic job, carry on. So the next day, before we left, we got up, we ran another couple of miles to get the marathon. We then drove on to London, where I was able to complete the marathon and meet the charities that I worked with. However, Portsmouth, let's talk about Portsmouth. If you're running 7 marathons in 7 days and driving like 1,600 miles, do not finish with a cross-country marathon. It is a stupid idea, especially when you're going slow. Okay, so I had the one thing I wanted to achieve with Portsmouth was I was not going to come last. Okay, I was not going to come last, and I didn't. I came 8th to last, which is still not last. However, there is a little section that runs across the coast. It's about 250 meters of coastline. And I was getting so slow that the tide was slowly coming in. So those 250 meters leading up to the last 1.5 miles on tarmac, I was wading thigh deep through water with St. John's ambulance cycling on the coast going, are you all right? Yeah, fine, fine. And I made it out the other side, okay? Since then I've done boxing fights, I've done long distance hikes, I've done sailing trips, I've done mountaineering, I've done basically everything I can. However, last year I decided to take a slightly different approach to it. I set myself some goals every year. One of my goals for last year was to break a Guinness World Record. So I went out and I bought the annual, and I'm flicking through, and stacking sugar cubes? Pfft, nah. And I'm going, ooh, Usain Bolt, don't think I'll beat him. Carry on. And I knew what I was looking for. I knew it had to be long, I knew it had to be something very, very different. And so I read about a lady called Jeanette Hastings. Jeanette Hastings lives in Western Australia. She is the Guinness World Record holder for ironing, marathon ironing. So that is basically where you stand in front of an ironing board and you iron non-stop for 80 hours. So I went, I'm going to do this. This is my world record. But I'm not going to break it by an hour or two. What's the point in that? If I'm going to break it, I'm going to break it by a significant amount. So my aim was 100 hours of ironing. Okay, we got some massive sponsors behind us, and this was going to be a huge event, absolutely humongous event. And so I planned it all. It took me 4 months of planning. Everyone was happy. I was raring to go. I walk into Asda where I'm doing my I'm doing the event. Walk up to the customer service to see where they want me, and they go, "You're not in our book at all." I think, but I checked. I'm sure I checked. Did I give them the wrong day? What's going on? Someone just hadn't written it in. With 5 minutes to go until the 10 a.m. start time, I was still getting my kit out of the car. Those first few hours were horrific in the sense of I had a lot of media coverage for it. And all they wanted to do was ask me questions. And all I wanted to do was to get into my rhythm. Rhythm's really, really important. Okay, my rhythm was quite simply, I was going to iron for 120 minutes, then have a 5-minute break to go to toilet. Iron for 120 minutes, have a 5-minute break to go to toilet. Iron for 120 minutes, then have a 20-minute break to go to the toilet, eat, drink, and sleep. Over the course of that entire time, I slept for 2 hours, 47 minutes. Now, this has an effect on the brain, quite obviously. After 24 hours, it's like having 24 hours of being awake, it's like having a pint or a couple of pints in your system. After 48 hours, you start to get a bit slow in your thought process and not really sure what's going on. After 72 hours, your brain starts to shut down, so it can focus purely on what you're doing at the moment. Which meant by the hour of 90, when I had my girlfriend there, my best friend and a work colleague, my brain was so focused on the ironing, I lost my memory. So I stand there and I turn around and go, what am I doing? Oh my God. Who are you? This lasted for 3.5 hours before my memory eventually came back. Luckily, I was with a great group of people who went, "You're ironing, crack on." So at no point was I allowed to stop ironing. Now, I don't really remember it, but apparently I got my 5-minute break, and they said you could have a break, and I just stood there and just cried uncontrollably until they went, "You need to start ironing again." And I went, "Why?" They were more concerned that I was doing everything they were telling me than the task I was doing. It got so bad that I was getting chaperoned to and from the toilets. Because at one point I went to the toilet and they saw me walking past the bananas going, "I don't know where I'm going." But eventually, the 100 hours finished, and I became the world record holder for marathon ironing. And that is pretty much my story of how I went from death through the addiction of the events and came out the other side as a world record holder. Thank you very much, guys.
Smile, be chat, join for networking.